Okay, 4 o'clock, we ready? 4 o'clock. Allison, you ready?
Ready?
Are we muted? Okay, I will call to order the meeting of the Greenwood Stormwater Board Wednesday, July 14th at 4 o'clock. Could I have a roll call, please?
David Payne,
Here.
Forrest Sutton,
Here.
Tim McLaughlin.
Here.
I will entertain a motion for approval of minutes from our last meeting of June 2nd.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. McLaughlin. Your second?
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Sutton. Are there any further discussion on the minutes?
No. No.
Okay, all in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Do we have to do roll call?
Yes.
Okay.
David Payne.
Aye.
Forrest Sutton,
Aye.
Tim McLaughlin.
Aye.
Okay, we'll show minutes being approved. Don't see anything under old business, so we're at new business. So the demolition on Pearl Street.
This is our ongoing mitigation project. As the board realizes, we have 90 days to demolish these structures. So I'll be asking the board to ratify an agreement with NASB Construction for the demolition of 398 East Pearl. Ratify that the stormwater superintendent signed on the board's behalf of an amount of not to exceed $15,600.00.
15,600.
That's correct.
All right, is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Yes, I'll second that.
Okay, a motion by Mr. McLaughlin, second by Mr. Sutton. Any further discussion on the ratification of this?
No. No.
All right, roll call, please.
David Payne,
Aye.
Forrest Sutton,
Aye.
Tim McLaughlin.
Aye.
Okay, so that's being ratified. All right, Mr. Stone, I think you're up.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. All right, good afternoon. Thank you for the time, and we wanted to come present a mid-year update relative. Earlier this year, Stormwater Board adopted a 5-year rate study that kept rates for users the same, and as part of that presentation and the adoption of that, one of the management recommendations was a quarterly monitoring or update cycle as well. So tonight's presentation is really trying to continue in spirit of that, to provide continuous support in those rates to provide stormwater utility visibility into its revenue and rate structure in between those kind of large formal rate study periods to make sure directionally revenues are sufficient. So this is a short framework. This is the first presentation of these. We appreciate any feedback and can incorporate that in future meetings. But really the purpose is pretty straightforward. We're trying to look at and present year-to-date actuals relative to the utilities budget. Same year-to-date actuals relative to what was adopted in the rate study as a spin plan, which I'll define here in a moment. Look at projected ending fund balances relative to target levels with regards to bondholders, and then compare month-over-month revenue and expense trends, as well as year-to-date capital and CIP items. So the first stop here is on budget to actuals. This is the original budget of $4.03 million was adopted formally through the budget process last year, and then in local government finance, there's revisions to that budget that are the sum total of any budget carryovers at the end of the year that may cross over, additional appropriations, as well, and then budget transfers typically. So in this case, you've had budgets that were carried over, and then at your, I believe it was the March or April meeting, there was the additional $1 million appropriation for the Madison project contribution. which increased that as well. So the actual effective revised budget mid-year is $5,713,533, of which year-to-date $1,959,550 has been dispersed against those budget accounts. There's approximately $201,000 of encumbrances outstanding. These are effectively accounts payable items that are committed but not yet paid. So the available budget as of June 30th of this year is $3,552,755. So one kind of common way to look at this is that, generally speaking, but for capital items, you want to see kind of equal drawdown of your budget throughout the year. So, so as Greg and I kind of look at this, it's a function of your 50% through the year. Where are you at relative to your budget? How much of your budget do you have remaining at that point? So in this case, you have well in excess of 50% of your budget remaining, while being 50% of the year complete. Okay, one way. I did put a call out at the very bottom. The activity in the interfund transfers out. There's activity in that account, but it's not budgeted. It's an unappropriated account. That's the actual account that's used to cover your debt service. So that was looking at actuals to the budget. The rate study actually introduced this new concept, this new targeted level, which we're defining as a spend plan. So this was actually provided by the controller's office and was a kind of internal expectation for expense. There's certain budgetary items that may be more conservative or those kind of things. So it's more of a target management directive of what they're expecting to spend. And when we look at, and so when those numbers were worked in the rate study, ultimately the board 5-year spend plan. Okay, so that was in that spend plan. 2021 was the first full year of that. So these quarterly updates, not only we're going to compare actuals to the legislative budget, but also to the spend plan. And that's what's going to give us that yardstick on an interim basis to let you know if spending and revenues are in line with the rate study that was approved, if that makes sense. So you can think of this as kind of the management target. So in this case, we have a year amount. So 2021 on the far right is kind of covered up by the Zoom panel. That's directly out of the rate study, okay? So if we meet or exceed that on the revenue side, or if we meet or come in below that on the expenditure side, for the end of this year, we're relatively on target with the rate study that was passed. Year-to-date target in the middle is essentially just 50% of the annual target, and then the year-to-date actuals are for the 6 months completed through 30. So I say all that as context. Takeaways. Right now, when we look at the year-to-date revenues, we came in at just shy of $1.7 million. We're effectively $3,000 over our year-to-date target. We are right at 50%. I think it's right at around 51% of the year-to-date plan. Couldn't really get any better on trend than that. When we look at expenses, we're actually slightly under plan year-to-date. So in this case, we look at just operating and maintenance expenses, we're about 880,000 rounded versus 1.2. So again, that's a positive. When we look at the debt service, there was actually a change. We'll see it in the capital plan here in a moment. There was a change to the timing of that Honey Creek Bridge project. So originally, during the rate study, we were anticipating that debt service could come online as early as half a payment this year. That project, you'll see, has been delayed out for 1 year. So such, that's in the plan, not going to be realized. And then lastly, the capital is slightly above year-to-date plan, but still below the current total. So I know this is a new way of looking at it, but we hope that over time, as we can report on this framework, it'll help the utility and the board. There's the rate study assumed a 5-year block of time. We're measuring quarter by quarter how you're doing relative to that, so that gives you direction whether or not that full rate study still has integrity or not to it. So, and then on the cash position, you ended June with $2,990,000, just shy of $995,000. The required fund balance, which is the absolute minimum for bondholders, is $408,975. And just for record, that's 2 months operating expenses. So quite a bit higher than that. When you look over at the plan side, we're planned for the end of the year to have $2,209,000. So it's in the plan to draw down fund balance to fund capital in the short term. All right, so there's a lot going on in this chart, but hopefully as we unpack it here, it'll be helpful to you. So the first thing is this is looking at the last 18 months, okay? So it's looking all of 2020 and the first 6 months of 2021. The blue line is the monthly revenue, and it's bouncing around because the utility recognizes inter-year financials on cash basis, and they bill quarterly, okay? So it's not a lot of revenue, bill quarter, okay? Drops back down, bills quarter. So that's where those peaks are on that revenue line. And you can see quarter over quarter, they're slowly increasing, okay? While there's no rate increases that's creating that, that's all organic account growth, okay? So directionally, it's pretty flat, plus a little bit of account growth that's happening, okay? The gray line is the total expenditures for the utility. So it's operating and capital expenditures, okay, month over month. You can see that it's jumped up in 2021 because we have our capital improvement plan is fairly front loaded. We have quite a bit of capital expenditures over the first 2 years as part of that drawdown of the fund balance. The last two lines that are kind of the small fainter lines, those are trend lines over the last 18 months. So the first line there that's blue, that's the revenue line. And it's pretty much flat, but for slightly increasing with some of the account growth. You'll see the gray line of month over month expenditure trend is currently trending higher than revenue, and that's per the plan. So if we jump back again, we look at the year-to-date actuals, we look at the current fund balance of $2.9 million versus the 2021 year-end plan cash balance projected 2.2. The only way we get there is if the utility spends down that cash, okay? And that's where that's where that delta in expenditures is happening. So it's in the plan to basically spend this year more than the current year revenue. So to say that, okay? It's planned drawdown of fund balance. So in consultation with the controller, we also thought that sharing then kind of a recurring revenue and expense would also be helpful. So a lot of what was driving the operating expense is capital expenditures that are discretionary, non-recurring, one-time items. So when we look at recurring revenue and recurring expenses that are not capital, this is what the chart looks like. The revenue is exactly the same. The monthly expenditures now are different because we're not looking at capital. So whereas the prior, there was an uptick because of the capital items, in this case, when you look at the actual operating, it's actually trending down. So in this case, the trend line is actually inverted. So in this case, you're actually trending where you have the revenue is actually still flat. It's the top black line. The second one is trending down as the operating expense. So on a go-forward recurring basis, you actually have in this 18-month timeline, you have actually a net revenue surplus that's actually increasing over time. Lastly, on the capital improvement, side, so this was adopted for the 5-year period of the rate study, 2021 to 2025. Every 2 weeks, there's a project meeting where this is gone through, and then every month, quarter, there's a reporting process that goes out internally to update this. We just went through that process last month, I believe, and made some revisions to that, and this is trying to report that to you all. So tried to put some arrows in there to show you. The first one, as previously mentioned, Honey Creek Bridge, time of your rate It was originally anticipated to be funded by bond proceeds issued this year. And in order to coordinate that with the Worsville Road project, we decided to push that out to 2022, therefore pushing out that debt service item. Firstly, there's a lot of activity happening at the County Line 965 site. So the stormwater infrastructure that's been kind of bid and thought about there, that was originally thought to be more of a 2023 item, is starting to be considered to be accelerated and pulled forward to the 2022. Certainly, all of this is still in flight through the budget process. These are the best estimates that are available today. And so the other thing I would point out is at the very bottom here, you see the various different sources. So where it says less amount funded by grant proceeds and less amount funded by capital leases, these are all of the different ways that these projects are currently contemplated to be financed. And the most important line here, they're all important, but the one that's the most important for kind of rate planning purposes is really that very bottom line. So as I've said a couple different times during the presentation, we're really trying to make sure we're managing the use of the fund balance, okay? And trying to keep rates in line. So this is a pretty big capital program. We're trying to do it within the existing rate structure. So what you see here, that 2.35 million, then followed by 4 years of 500,000 at the very bottom, that's how much the rate plan, as well as the rate study, as well as the current CIP contemplates as draw down cash paid projects. Everything else is either a bond or a capital lease or some sort of grant proceed. So the cash forecast in the rate study and then the cash forecast in your current plan are exactly the same. So what you approved in the rate study per year has not changed, and we're continuing to monitor that. So right now, the amount of capital projects paid by fund cash on hand is, for this year, still anticipated to be 2.35 million, and for the 5-year rate study period, 4.35 million. The last item I have, and I know we've covered a lot, so I'm happy to field questions, is something that Controller, Deputy Controller, and myself have been working on over the last couple months, is the development of a tool to do, I guess, ad hoc long range planning. So one of the gaps that we had was being able to quickly prepare a long range forecast. So without it being, each one being kind of a big analytical exercise. So working with the department, we connected a data integration to the city's general ledger, pulling that data on an hourly basis, running through some assumptions, and then basically creating a future 20-year forecast in time based on those assumptions. And that's updated daily. So this is a first early example of that. It'll be a tool that you and the departments have for planning and budgeting purposes going forward. Wanted to share it with you today. We're still working on it, but in addition to these quarterly updates that are really focusing on current year and the 5-year rate plan, we also thought it would be helpful to show you kind of directionally a longer horizon to see kind of what's going on as well. And that, we believe this chart does that. In this case, we're looking at 2021 forecast, so that's taking current data. In this case, this was run as of July 8th. So as of July 8th, it's doing a monthly linear projection for the current year. And then based on the assumptions that are fed for revenue and expenses, projects that out through the next 20 years. So the dark blue line is revenue, as we kind of currently showed. Without any rate increases, the account growth is baked in there, but generally it's pretty flat. So right now, there's a current kind of operating surplus, but over time with inflation and those kind of things, that is expected to eventually surpass revenue. So, so the net takeaway is, for this quarter, revenues are sufficient and you're in plan relative to the rate study you approved earlier this year. And then the long-term forecast points to things down the line may need to be re-investigated, but at this point, there's no changes needed, and we'll continue to monitor. Happy to take any questions that you may have, and also any feedback or any additional things you'd like to see in future updates.
No, actually, I was looking at this long-range forecast, and I'm glad you mentioned it. In 2027, if things would stay the way they are today, expenses are gonna be above our income, so just need to be thinking about that. But anybody else have any questions?
No, sir. None.
Okay.
That's all I got. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, any other new business, Chris? Okay, is there anybody from the audience who would like to address the board? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to reports. Council, you have anything for us?
I have nothing to report except for I know that the semi-monthly item report was filed, but that's the only thing I have.
Okay, thank you. I don't see anybody from the engineering office. Is there anybody online? All right. Anything else from the controller?
Yep.
Okay. Chris, anything else?
Yeah, I've got my field report, and as you can see on the screen, the finance office, billing manager sent us a financial report as well to the board. Now on to our field report. Street sweeping, 37.4 tons, 6.3 inches of precipitation, temperature's going up 73.8, 168 work orders initiated, 144 completed, 37 requests, 47 completed. We had a rain barrel workshop, 2,806 locates, 31 ESC, 148 ESC inspections, 15 hotspots cleared, 44 BMP inspections. Jetting, we're in the Featherstone edition, along Emerson, Sandwich Court, 5.53 tons of debris were removed at a cost of $274.31. Just a couple other items are our Tracy Ditch lift station. It's been running a lot. We're getting some good look on that, but hopefully it'll be a good product because it kind of, as you said earlier, there aren't as many complaints, in these significant rain. I mean, from last month we had 3 inches of precipitation to this month of 6 inches for the month of June. We seem to be doing well in these hot spots, and doing preventive maintenance goes a long way.
Mhm.
So that's the only way we can get there is with a good staff and support staff that we have. So,
Right.
So I have.
I do have one question about the financial report that we have. Down, it says we have an outstanding amount as of 6:30 of $1,079,000. Is that with current billing, or is that?
Hi, this is Kaylee, Utility Office Manager. That does include the outstanding amount is the total balance, including what was just billed.
Okay.
So that 802,000 is the most recent billing, and then we do still have 230,000. Basically, that's 2 months plus old.
Okay.
Which, to elaborate on that, our original Q1 was 272,000, and the goal was to get that under 250. So we surpassed that by over $20,000 of a goal, sending out 561 collection notices and collecting over $60,000.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. Okay, anybody else have any questions?
No, sir. No.
Okay. No, think anybody from the mayor's office is on? All right, Commissioners, you have anything you want to talk about?
I have nothing. No. No, sir.
Okay. I will entertain motion to approve claim dockets.
So moved.
Okay, motion by Mr. McLaughlin. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Sutton. Have a roll call, please.
David Payne,
Aye.
Forrest Sutton,
Aye.
Tim McLaughlin.
Aye.
Okay, we will show those as being approved. Anything else that needs to come before the board? All right, hearing none, we will be adjourned at 4:25. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.